You're listening to the Product Coalition podcast with Jay Stansell. This is where product mastery happens. This is where careers are made. Welcome to the Product Coalition podcast. Let's go.
Welcome to another episode of the Product Coalition podcast. I'm your host, Jay Stansell, and today we're tackling one of the most pressing topics in tech right now. It's all about the unique challenges of building AI products. And with me is a guest who's been solving them at, to be honest, the highest level for decades. Michael Smith is a founder of Sagital AI and a veteran product leader with an elite resume. We've got Google, Amazon, Yahoo, Qualcomm, and SwiftKey. And at SwiftKey, Michael helped launch the first ever neural network-based mobile keyboard, which I honestly remember downloading for the first time. That set a new bar for predictive technology on smartphones. And today at Sagital AI, he's advancing AI that adapts to people, not the other way around. So in this episode, we're going to be diving in to why traditional product frameworks often fail when applied to AI, how to design AI products that support entire team workflows, not just the individual features, and the importance of that wall clock time and service design when mapping AI into the real business context. Michael brings a rare clarity to the complexity of AI, and you're going to leave this episode not just smarter about AI, but better equipped to build with it as well. Let's get started, Michael. It's an absolute pleasure to have you join me today. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me, Jay. I'm really impressed with all the podcasts I've seen that you've given. So it's an honor to be here.
Michael, I touched very briefly on some of the big brand names in tech that we all know. Would you mind just giving us a little bit more depth to, what has been that career journey for you behind the scenes of those big names?
Well, so with Qualcomm, I was pretty much a traditional programmer doing C++ embedded work on some of the early cellular base station work, and then some satellite telephony and lots of other stuff, digital cinema, little bits and pieces there. And then I did some work with Yahoo as a product manager on search and mobile. In Amazon, I only worked there for one summer, but it was a summer where we were doing we were actually launching the first marketplace. So everyone who was not Amazon selling on there, I think before that, the only people who were selling on Amazon were Target. So it was super interesting. It was amazing to watch Amazon work everything with spreadsheets and just kind of be very hacky and efficient with it, which was great. After that, I went back to Qualcomm for a little bit, and then came over to the UK, where I joined a startup that was doing handsets that were kind of like Spotify and Facebook centric handsets, a spinoff of 3, which is where I met my co-founder. So I've been working with him, and we've been friends for 15 years. Then I was a product manager at Google in ads, and there's nothing like the scale of Google ads to kind of let you understand what you can do with machine learning. And we were doing like automatic placement of ads on the page, which was very early at that point. And then I left that to help with SwiftKey on some of their launches. Loved that product. We had used that actually at the prior handset company I had working with. And then from that point forward, I've done multiple different startups, not only SwiftKey, but a streaming company called Fubo TV out of New York, a finance loans for international students called Prodigy Finance in London. And then most recently was a product manager at Omnipresent doing employer of record or international employment. And then that led me to our current company, Sagital.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to get us into the topic for today, challenges unique to AI products, Michael. Can I ask why, as a topic, was this important did you feel for you to be talking about me today?
Yeah, so when we were trying to, so I think it's probably worth me just 10,000 foot what Sagital does. So we do automation for the software development lifecycle, which is, rather than integrating in with just your IDE, we integrate in with like Jira, GitHub, Notion, Figma, and we complete tasks end to end within that space. So We welcome some of these other big players who are finally catching up with what we're doing this week. But we do completion of things like tickets to pull requests, but we don't stop there. I think we're ahead of the competition in what we can do in this, because we can read and write from almost every tool, which means we can do things like product requirements documents into Jira tickets. We can help you organize Jira tickets. We can help you write tests. We can help you with your deployments. So there's a lot of automation we can do in this. Why I think this is important, and where this is relevant to how you do product management in AI, is my co-founder and I realized that when we looked at the massive capacity in AI and what this thing is capable of, I think our instinct is to kind of like put a really thin slice and ship and iterate. And I think we might be misinterpreting what ship and iterate what meant, and kind of how to approach that with a product strategy versus product development. I do think that you need to kind of like break down your tasks and kind of do, kind of figure out what you're going to do, ship next. But I think your product strategy needs to be much more aggressive, and your analysis needs to be much larger than a lot of people are doing. And with something that's as disruptive as AI, you can make the mistake, I believe, of locally optimizing and actually, let's say, helping you type the definition of a ticket faster. Well, that's nothing compared to combining that with your understanding of your PRD and your code base at the same time. And then you're redesigning your entire workflow and kind of dramatically changing the way that you are addressing AI. So I think AI requires you to step all the way back to redefining your product and redefining the way in which you service your customers with this absolutely disruptive brand new technology. And you should be really brave and big in how you apply AI. Not, lean shipping and agile shipping is about shipping. It isn't about product strategy. And what I'm seeing is people complicating or conflating those two things, and their ambition of what they're shipping looks this big, when the ambition should be this big, and you should ship with little small slivers.
Nice. I like that quote. Be brave and big. For many businesses out there, Michael, they are being brave and big, and a lot of the AI products that we're seeing are the label I'd use is wrapper products around the LLMs out there. And in your time, you must have seen a lot of AI products that are not effective in business. So my question is, why are some AI solutions simply not effective?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that analysis and how narrowly you can look at it. Look, we feel like we've already mapped out the user journey, for example, and so then we say, well, how can I apply AI to speed up this bottleneck in my user journey? I think what you should be instead doing is saying there's the superpower of AI that can actually dramatically blow up the way that our current user journey works. And I believe that what you should be doing is going back to redefining what it is. So I think that, and I see that really playing out in two ways. One is that you design faster horses. And that's kind of that first I was talking about, which is that you are locally optimizing. And but I think the second one is actually throwing out everything and believing that AI needs to be the first, we need a truly 100% AI workflow, and then the humans serve the AI. You see this a lot with people who expect copy and paste to come out of these chat bots. And if you think about the way in which you can be a secretary to an AI in a lot of these things, that's not going to get the best out of the human either. So I think you have to find that balance between really blowing this up, but not making the AI in charge. Make the humans in charge, but figure out how you bring the AI to that process.
Okay, so when we're thinking about building AI-based products that are impactful for customers, when you're leading a team through working through that, for you, is it all about principles, or is it about frameworks, or is it a blend of the two to ensure that you're building a great AI-based product?
That's an interesting question, and I do think I would say, Well, I don't think it's about frameworks. I think it is more about like the basic principles, because the frameworks are pretty much the same. I think we're using the same processes.
Okay.
But I think what's really interesting here is I think it is about it's remembering what it is that the humans can do really well and what it is that the AI can do really well, and teasing that apart and making sure that you're kind of understanding what is different and what is the same in an AI-centric world. I was on a panel earlier this week that was super interesting, where we were making a lot of points about how fundamentally product management hasn't changed. You're still selling to human beings. They still have a problem to solve. And you need to start with those principles and really understand what that is. But I think where it's extraordinarily different is you need to reimagine that solution with AI in it. Not actually just look at AI in a kind of siloed environment.
Understood. Going deeper into this, well, let's start with product discovery, first of
Yeah.
all. What are some of the fundamental differences between an AI product discovery versus traditional SaaS product discovery, let's say?
Well, this, and I think this depends very much on what your time horizons are.
Okay.
So I find that when it is that classic thing where when you ask a customer what they want, they will tell you they want a faster horse. So you ask your existing customers how AI can help them, and they will think about AI speeding up an existing part of the process. And by the way, there's a lot of traction you can get. You can move quick to market with that. And a really good example that's in my head all the time is I'm very jealous of these people who have created a superb autocomplete inside an IDE, such as Cursor. And oh my God, it is pretty obvious to work with. It is a big, it is impactful today, and it's an easy route to market. However, strategically, I see that can only, if you think about the development process and what AI could do to your development process, and for example, we at Sagittal do end-to-end kind of things. So our hypothesis is, why do you even need to open an IDE? A lot of times you should start at a closed PR, right, with a summary. And in that regard, I think you should figure out strategically. And now we're startups, so we're betting really hard on the future, and then finding VCs who are willing to go along a slightly longer route. So we have fundraising strategies around that. But as a product manager, I think you just need to be really clear: are you shipping AI-empowered faster horses, or are you trying to actually reinvent the market and be the next way that people are doing your process in an entirely reimagined way? That second way is much higher reward, much higher risk. And maybe you want to just kind of smartly balance your portfolio between those two, but just be very conscious of it. What I'm seeing is a lot of people are like, well, we should do autocomplete, or we should help somebody with this little thing that they're doing. And they kind of get obsessed about kind of changing those metrics. And as we know, if you're not looking at the end-to-end metrics, they could be vanity metrics. And so, for example, Atlassian has a help you write a ticket feature, which doesn't have any context in it. I'm not convinced that that's actually going to save people a lot of time. It may save people 30 seconds while they're typing in their ticket, but it's not going to knock days of work off of your process. So it's useful, and it's nice to put a little shiny box around it, which apparently is the way that you describe AI now, right? With the same stuff that's happening on Apple, everybody's stolen. But it's not necessarily going to redefine. So I think you just need to figure out how you're going to balance that portfolio.
Okay. What I'm hearing within that is, stay true to divergent thinking. Don't just assume that the first solution to the known problem is the right solution, and give yourself some time to stay in the known problem but unknown solution space, and really think through that without just jumping to the easiest, front of mind concept that leverages AI straight away.
Absolutely. And I think the first one is, how do I sprinkle AI on top of my existing processes? And the second one is, how do I blow up my processes redesign the entire service design, thinking AI native. And I think those are the two kind of spectrums of that framework.
Next question, Michael, staying in this build space here, discover and build space. I'm keen to learn from you, where do you place prompt engineering in this discovery and delivery process? Because from my experience, you need to get some fundamentals of what the prompt's going to be in the discovery space to know that what your requirements are to deliver on something. Is that something that when you're implementing building for AI, are you thinking about prompt engineering up in the discovery space, or are you focused purely on assuming we've got the prompt right, here's the outcome, and that's what we want to deliver, and we'll work out what the right prompts are going to be, and what's the right, and accompanying that, what's the right training data, what's the right training amount of data, what's the accuracy score you're looking for in discovery before you're then committing to it with an engineering team in delivery?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I think prompt engineering, I think there is a lot of known in the prompt engineering. We've gotten very quickly to that, where I guess a year and a half ago, we were kind of all sharing prompt tricks and methodologies. I think we know how to get through that a little bit more now. Maybe it's because we've been very native in that for 18 months now, and that feels like, oh, we know how to solve that problem. There's almost nothing that you can, if you as a human being know how to break down a problem and find your way through it, and let's say interrogate someone who's smart and can think, and you can give them direction to figure it out, then probably you can do the same thing where you can engineer a prompt to sort that out. Just be wary of like thinking that the AI is like a perfect expert in whatever it is you're trying to do. Now, which takes us to the second question, which is like, how do you think about training? And which I think that's a very good complementary question. How do you figure out the training that you're going to give to an LLM? And I think that it's really interesting. About a year ago, training versus prompting was a big question. And I think what's kind of fallen out is, you probably shouldn't train most of the time. What we have found is we train not at all, because we find that actually we can get much more utility by, and let's call it prompt stuffing, by stuffing all the information in the context that we need, the relevant short-term context, into the prompt that we give to the LLM. So what that means is you can prototype the heck out of this stuff really well. And you can do this within just a product management sphere. So prototyping and user testing and discovery can be done very quickly and easily if you don't have to do the training, which I don't think you do. Training to me is an optimization. It's a cost optimization. It might be a speed optimization, but it's not a core product capability optimization. So as long as you say, oh, pretend that this 15-second thing would have taken 2 seconds, you can do that while you're doing discovery. If you need to. Most of the time you don't need to. These things are really crazy fast. And especially we're experimenting right now with Grok, G-R-O-Q, not the K. And Grok has the super speedy stuff. So even if you need to do that, you can, I mean, that's about as fast as you can think right now. It won't be as precise as some of the frontier models, but yeah. So I think there's a lot of ways through this. I guess what you're kind of asking with the first question is a little bit of, do product managers need to be very wary about the time to implement and the risk to implementation in prompting? And I don't think so. I think there's very few things that you can reason through that you couldn't sort out with this. So I'd be less worried about that. Get yourself some good prompt engineers. All right.
Michael, I'm going to move on to customers shortly. I've got one final question for you in this discovery delivery space on the life cycle. My entry into AI was through traditional machine learning models, classification and regression. That was how I started my journey 7 years ago. Do you see any value in those original concepts around classification and regression? And are you using them to complement LLMs, or Are you stepping away from those completely?
Well, I think so. Absolutely. I think the generative AI. Well, first of all, the LLMs are just language, and generative AI is the way I like to think about it is you've got a point A where you are and a point B where you're trying to get to, and a prompt and an LLM or generative AI will kind of try to draw the most the way through. It'll try to draw a line from A to B with you, trying to find the simplest way through. But yes, absolutely, those other techniques are still very, very vital. They're going to be cheaper. They're going to be faster. They're going to be more predictable. The problem with generative AI is it sometimes is unpredictable. And therefore, I think that the technique that you need to apply to this is actually breaking down the problem into something that's a lot more focused. So, and by the way, we do this all the time, and we know that we're probably overdoing it. So, for example, we're using LLM to we only ever invoke the LLM with tool calling because we really want predictability and precision. We don't believe that anyone in a business context wants the highly unpredictable nature of an LLM or the non-deterministic nature of an LLM. So we attempt to bring as much determinism in as possible and make it a boring old tool that just happens to understand English in a rich way. So we actually use it a lot of times to just do classic natural language processing and say, are we going left or are we going right on this one? Like, and then it replies yes or no, and we try to make it, we use tool calling to focus the heck out of this, and we break down the problem as much as possible. That said, so we're using a power tool to just like drive a nail sometimes, at which point actually in the future, when this becomes a cost problem, we'll just use like, DeepSeek local and just have it ask a question, but we're not less worried about, so there's a ton of optimizations we can still bring.
Have you faced any debugging challenges when you're trying to use this non-deterministic tool to create deterministic outcomes?
Absolutely. And what we find is that actually, do you think your customers really want to buy something that doesn't behave in a way that you understand how it works, much less them? I mean, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to understand this. So I believe that whenever you have that thing and it's too big and like your tests semi sort of pass like 75% of the time, but 25% of the time. So you have to run them like multiple times to pass your CIT. I mean, that's a bad smell. What that means is you probably could break that down into something that's a little bit more predictable and a little bit more deterministic. We run unit tests against our prompts and against us against our functions all the time. Like we have a very good unit testing framework, and our tests like pass all the time. And we've spent a lot of time doing it. We're lucky then that one of our engineers helped do some very early GPT stuff on Memrise, which was a learning. It was like a competitor to Duolingo, and he was doing this very early, GPT-2. And so he was building. He has experience in building very predictable testing frameworks around this. And so it is very possible. You just need to actually make them smaller and more predictable. And that will make have you a better product, which is why we believe that like a workflow first approach is much better than a pure agentic one where you let the planning go to the AI. You probably, as a product manager, know a ton more about your domain and the basic top-level workflows than an AI that you say, "Hey, make a plan for me." I don't think you want to do that in the middle of your at the very beginning of your product usage by your customers.
Nice. Thank you. Well, I promised to take us over to the customer side. Let's have a talk about now customer adoption of AI products. How can companies overcome them? What are some of the challenges around those transitions from moving, deterministic tools to non-deterministic tools for the customer adoption side of it?
Yeah, and I guess I can talk about this in two ways. One is from the customer's perspective, and then I think it's probably worth talking about from a product perspective, how you then encourage your customers to adopt your product, which is actually one of the things that we're finding the most challenging. as someone who's trying to embed AI in your organization, I think there's kind of two big things I think that's worth keeping in mind. One, and then this leads on to how you think about it as a product to ship that product. The first one is you should really be looking at metrics that matter to your business. That is really things like for example, we try to talk about like how long it takes you to complete a task in your company, because what you care about is the velocity of the team, not how fast a developer types or how happy they are with the experience of having a co-pilot with them, because like developer experience and developer time, so they could take almost the same amount of time. What you've just done is reduce the cognitive load of the engineer that you're paying good money for, but maybe not affected their time a lot, maybe some. I'm not sure that's terribly useful. So definitely, as you need to worry about the real metrics that matter. So have a really good idea of how you would expect AI and then measure it. Because I think a lot of people bring AI in and then kind of like abdicate responsibility of measuring the efficacy of it. The second thing is it is a change management thing, that everybody is going to be resistant to this. You have to kind of create a burning platform. You have to create a center of people who is going, or a group of people who are going to push this through. And then you have to work with them to actually implement this. So this means creating a center of mass. In our example, we often push our customers. If a customer says, oh yeah, well, we've got 2 engineers on this team and 1 engineer on this team and another engineer on this team who are willing to try out your product. And we're like, that's not going to work. You need a team. This is a team play. So you need a team to actually solve this. One of the things that I found most interesting is companies aren't early adopters. Teams aren't early adopters. Individuals are early adopters. And you as a leader, if you're trying to get this in AI into your company, you need to actually not only get the early adopters along for the ride, you have to create something that will get at least through the center of that bell curve, get them across that line as well. Look, the Shopify CEO a little while ago put a shot across the bow and was very, very strong about his opinions on that we have to do AI. He was not very sensitive to people about that, but I don't think his fundamental thing was wrong. I think his message, or the way he put it across, was not necessarily great. But he was right in kind of saying, in order to make this change, it has to be he created a burning platform inside his company.
Interesting. I want to double down on this for a moment here, Michael, because what I'm hearing is, and as all product managers know, the power of political capital and what it means for influencing others. You've worked at some big name brands on your journey. Do you mind just spending a couple of minutes here talking about how would you influence within an organization? How would you use your political capital to influence others to achieve the outcomes you were just talking to?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways to kind of go through this, right? You can browbeat someone, you can lead them through an intellectual discussion, you can lead them through an emotional discussion. I think maybe AI is probably, I think maybe the best is actually the combination of the intellectual and the emotional. And I think the intellectual is, if you actually, you kind of have to really go after the metrics, prove that you can do this. And some of this is going to be hard, because proving that the AI actually makes a difference means you have to kind of factor out the people who are kind of throwing sand in the machine. And you have to really be very clear about, this is the North Star. These are the metrics that we need to go after. This is why this is important. And look, we all know that you need to say things like 25,000 times. So I am probably one of the worst people on, as far as like the being able to chase whatever I most recently am like concerned about. But you have to pick your message, pick your metric, commit to it, stay the course, and if you're going to refine it, still make sure that it's on your prior one. So that's the intellectual one. That's like the banner you're carrying and the inspiration. then I think you really have to be sensitive to the fact that everybody's worried that AI is going to come take people's jobs, right? And you have to say, look, my job here is to get AI, like the thing I'm trying to do with you right now, if I'm trying to get you to adopt AI, is make you as a person safe, because you're not going to stop this AI wave. Like you're not going to do that. So let's embrace this. And let's figure out the way in which you still add huge value and in your humanness versus what the AI can bring. You can bring stuff that the AI can't. So in this process, let's work out what it is that you can actually bring that's so good that the AI doesn't stand a chance, and then actually give away as much of the stuff that the AI can do, and figure out I like to talk about the fluency between AI and humans. This is actually why. So the sagittal plane, which is the name of our company, is the one that cuts you this way. And the reason we picked that metaphor is humans and AI, and the part in your brain that has the most connectivity. And so the most important thing is actually that communication between AI and humans working together, which is why we talk about like adapting AI to humans. And so if you pitch this to your company, that we are attempting to bring the best out of both, and you're going to be at the forefront of that, making your job ever safer, you're going to be controlling this upcoming wave and riding it rather than being swept over by it, then I think you can get that emotional argument through.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that moment there. You mentioned metrics in there. What are the big vanity metrics here in AI products, Michael, that you're coming across, seeing that others should be cautious of?
Yeah, what's interesting that I can think of, well, the number one vanity metric is like time within a silo, right? You really need to kind of back up and say what is the job to be done by your customer, and the metric should be answering that job to be done, nothing smaller. So if your job to be done is cutting down trees, then the capacity with which you can cut down trees matters, not the starting speed of your chainsaw, right? That is a small portion of this. So helping accelerate someone in a very localized fashion is the vanity metric that I see most often. What's weird is I think I also want to talk about this reverse metric, which is a slight problem, where people say that the metric that we need to care about is the accuracy of the AI. And I believe that the accuracy of an AI is actually a trap. Like first of all, you're never going to get that to 100%. You shouldn't, because humans are not 100% either. So what's best is to trying to work that fluency between the human and the AI, and trying to figure out how to bring an AI to a flawed human experience. So let me give you a really good tangible example. One of the startups who I know very well, who it's called Genesis, with a J. They do bookkeeping software for folks, and their thing is look, our AI's not 100%. It's just a heck of a lot better than human beings, and it plays well with the human beings in helping them out with that process. It doesn't replace them. It actually just augments it and gets rid of a lot of the things where humans will make mistakes on the kind of minutia. And we are trying to do the same kind of thing where, and I thought that was a really interesting maneuver where, look, I think you've got different standards. If you've got things like cars out there where safety is, and actually, honestly, it's not just safety, it's responsibility, it's who's liability. If you're trying to make a change internally, liability is not as big of a deal. If you can prove that your AI can do as well as humans at this thing that humans are bad at because their focus drifts because they're bored. Like, that's a fantastic way to look at it.
One of the internal frameworks I'm using is considering that accuracy against legal, ethical, and moral framework.
Oh, that's great.
Really nice. What's the accuracy needed from a legal perspective? If you're in a high stakes environment, self-driving cars would be a great example, versus what is the accuracy needed to be ethically responsible? And then is there any individual moral standards that we want to adhere to?
Yes, and
as well.
you've got a performance lens on top of it. I really like what you just said, because everybody thinks about the performance one, and I think those other three are very clear about the risks that are the other ones. Yeah, that are easy to forget.
Well, and what I think it's easy to forget in the excitement of all things AI right now is that when we're training or providing within the prompt the context, that context typically could be out of date the following day. And so how as product leaders are we managing context shifting that is happening because we're so caught up in the outcomes and the accuracy scores and the impact on the customers that there isn't this moment on a regular cadence to just review the context there, as we know that can shift so quickly. Michael, we started at the beginning of the episode talking about slices of delivery. Let's bring it back to that now. What is the MVP for an AI product, and how is that different from how we've traditionally been thinking about MVPs?
That's super interesting, because I mean, my first implication, going back to what I referred to in the panel that I had earlier this week, was just like a lot of stuff doesn't change, right? You're still trying to ultimately affect a change in a customer. So, and the same things apply, right? You kind of want somebody who's super excited, but you're I forget what the Clayton Christensen statement is, like the underperforming product, but the person still really wants it. It underperforms in many dimensions, but it performs really well in some. Then you know you've got something, right? So that doesn't change. That's the same. And I also feel like actually, to go back to your prior question too about prompt management, you can know that you have a method to optimize prompt management eventually, and know that you will be able to sort that out. So that doesn't have to be perfect. So your MVP can be okay. Look, we get this like 75% of the time. Bet you we can get it to 90 if I'm like thinking about it from a product and technological perspective. So good product manager working with who's played enough with prompting, and a good engineer playing enough with prompting, and you're like, okay, yeah, actually, we know we have a roadmap to kill that. So then it becomes very, very similar. I think one of the biggest challenges is some of that behavioral stuff that we talked about. How do you manage the user's interface with this, and how do you create that connectivity between the AI and the human? And that, I think, is a very super interesting one. I was talking to one of our customers and the VP product or VP of engineering, and he had a very interesting insight, which was he thinks that AI is almost more like the Industrial Revolution than like the internet, because it really is coming for people's jobs, and it is really changing the way, from the difference between swinging a pickaxe and using a steam engine. It's like the machinery is just very different. And so there's a lot of change that needs to happen. So that change management becomes a much bigger part of your product, as opposed to digitization. We've all been on the internet. We're actually just talking about a faster way and a smoother way to kind of deliver a digital product. We've been lulled into that for the last 5 or 10 years, where the patterns are kind of set, but actually a lot of that stuff is very different. So there's the change management is real. And the differences are very big in that regard.
Thank you so much. Michael, this has been an absolute pleasure to spend 40 minutes with you today, going deep into the world of building and servicing AI products. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. This has been a joy as well. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, everyone, also for listening to this episode with Michael Smith and myself discussing AI products here. If you'd like to learn more about Product Coalition, please head over to productcoalition.com. Until next time, thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Product Coalition podcast, hosted by Jay Stansell. Got questions or want to explore more topics? Connect with Jay on LinkedIn or join the ever-growing Product Coalition community on Substack. Thanks for listening.